Christian Osgood joins me here today, and you can learn what his team is up to by heading over to multifamilystrategy.com. Multifamilystrategy.com. You're going to find his popular YouTube channel there as well. So definitely like and subscribe when you find that. But really appreciate your time. Your domain says it all. We're going to be talking about multifamily here today.
There we go. The main thing, multifamily. Dude, I'm so excited to be on. Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate you being on. What I think is interesting here, Christian, is that you mentioned what before we hit record, you started off actually with multifamily to a certain extent, getting a couple duplexes, triplexes, and then graduating really quickly into some of the bigger properties. More times than not, listeners are starting with the single family homes and multifamily is aspirational, but you kind of just jumped in head first.
I found that we start in like first grade to get to second grade, second to third, middle school to high school, maybe college, third, fourth, fifth job. We're trained to take qualifying steps to get from one place to the other. I always wanted to own apartment buildings, and I was two duplexes when I had the realization of like, what is actually keeping me from doing the thing I want to do? And so I bought a 38 plex and realized, wait, that was the same process as buying a duplex. It's not massively different. I mean, sure, there's an extra zero at the end of the price point, but it's just more units, a little bit easier to manage when all your units are in one place under one set of roofs. I found that it was basically the same thing, just a little bit larger
Mhm.
business.
Yeah. So talk about that process. It seems like you have the proper mindset to do this because once you figure that piece of it out, that a multifamily is just as easy as a single family, I think more people would actually do it.
That was my discovery. So I had the good fortune of we had the whole country shut down between 2019 and 2020, where I had time to take a break from my sales job. Unlike a lot of entrepreneurs, you were like, "Why did you get into business?" They're like, "I read Rich Dad Poor Dad," and then my mind was so. I hear that on like every single podcast. I started with Dave Ramsey's. My father had me read that book. My mentor in high school had me read that book. So I went to college. I got a job. I scaled a sales career from $11 an hour up to about 250-ish a year over an 8-year career, saved and bought my house that I lived in and 2 duplexes, of which the cash flow covered my mortgage. So I built a business over 8 years where my real estate was paying for my real estate. Had 4 tenants covering 5 units worth of real estate. Pretty cool place to be. Reasonably high income, rental income coming in, $24,000 a year, nothing to not financial freedom. My wife ended up getting injured at school right as we came back from the whole shutdown. I won't say the word so you don't get a strike against her, but
Mhm.
the thing that happened, we all stayed at home for an extended period of time. During that time, we go back. She had just got done teaching kindergarten over Zoom, which is insane. She immediately gets injured, and my goals changed from, "Hey, I wanna have a little bit more financial freedom. I wanna buy one rental at a time," to, "I need to get her out of this job right now." And I had just left my job of 250 down to 50,000 a year to learn how to buy more real estate. I went to a brokerage. There was, at the time, a 20-year-old in the office. His name's Cody, and he had 24 rentals. He'd never had a W-2 job. He dropped out of college. And by the time I had closed on my second duplex, he bought a 6-unit building across the street with me. He was using literally no money because he had no money. His family didn't have any money to give him. And he was at 30 rentals before he was 21. I was able to see that and go like, well, is there anything special about him other than, high drive? He didn't have anything different than me. So I was like, why could I not do the same thing? He and I then partnered on a 38 unit building over the course of the next few years, about hundreds of units. But I was blessed with the context of seeing a very young kid, 8 years younger than me, doing the thing that I wanted to do without using any capital. And I was like, well, if he can do it, I mean, come on, I have to be more qualified, right? I have a college education. I'm much older. I have more money. I have a few rentals. This should be doable. And it turns out it was, and it's doable for just about anyone.
It's really important. Like you had kind of a unique experience there where you saw somebody younger and you're trying to achieve something that firsthand experience of
Mhm.
what is possible. It's amazing what a little motivation like that can do.
A little motivation and a little context, right? I had a serious enough why. I think a lot of people had the same problem that I ran into. Is I'm like, okay, well, buying rentals makes more money. More money is nice. So my goal was like, let's have more money over time. That's not specific. It's not measurable. It has no timeline on it. Like, there's a lot of problems with that objective. When my wife got injured, it went like, okay, what do I actually want to do? And so I wrote it down in one sentence of in the next 2 years, I want to have enough rental income to retire my wife, to buy my dream house in Texas, actually build it, and have enough money to start my family and have the time, like provide for them and be able to spend time with them. So that's all the things that I wanted to do in the world. Build a house, retire wife, have time with my future kids. Then I went, okay, what does it actually cost to do that? And it's about $15,000. And I'm like, okay, I need to get to $15,000 per month out of my rental portfolio so that I can retire my wife, build the house, and afford to spend time with my kid. By the way, I had my kid. He just turned 2 months old today. We've officially hit all goals. You're in my new studio in Texas. We moved from Seattle to Texas. My wife is retired from teaching, and I officially have a son. So we were able to do all of that within a few years after we actually set a clear, measurable goal with timelines on it. That was the only difference. And then I had the context of saying, this is definitely possible. People with less qualifications with me are succeeding in this. Of course I can do it. There's no one less qualified than Cody Davis to be buying real estate at 20 years old, and yet he was knocking it out of the park and doing really good deals. So I took that context and my goal, I put them together. It was like, this is possible. Obviously, we can see it's possible. Someone's younger, less qualified has done it, and I know exactly where I want to go. So let's go build a business plan to get me exactly where I'm trying to go. That's what we did.
There's a couple things there that I'd like to talk a little bit about. First of all, you setting these goals and your targets.
Mm.
It's amazing. I know you've coached quite a few people now doing this type of thing. Does it still amaze you how many people don't sit down and actually write things down and make these type of plans? Because
I
it's
am a
it's like you gotta
data guy.
establish that target so you know what you're aiming for.
No, absolutely. I'm a huge data guy. So I track everyone who comes into multifamily strategy, the mentorship, their starting point. When I have an initial conversation, every single person who's gone through, and we've got over 1,000 students, everyone has had a onboarding call with me. So I've got to meet every single one of these people individually. And when I talk about their goals, it is consistently, it's about 1 out of every 12 have a clear measurable goal. It's about 1 out of 25-ish. It's actually like 26.7. We just ran the statistic. But basically, 1 out of 25 people have actually done the math for what does it cost to get where I'm going. So you have a small portion of people have any idea where they're trying to go at all. And then a much, much, much smaller portion have actually done any basic math to go, if I want to get there, what steps are needed and what income is required for where I want my life to be in X amount of years. It's not a really hard drill. I think one could intentionally focus on this, maybe an hour a day for 1 week. We live like 4,000 weeks or something like that. You have a lot of weeks to spend one, like an hour a day for 1 week, just visualizing what do I actually want to do? Like, where do I want my life to go? What do I want it to look like 5, 10, 15, 20, 50 years from now? And what things do I need to do to put it in motion? It takes intentional thought, but it doesn't actually take a lot of time or a lot of effort to come up with a general game plan and then what it costs to actually get there. It's a 1 week project for almost anyone. And I found that consistent with anyone who's been through our program or just people that I meet who are, we're talking about like, how do you get and stay motivated? Know where you're going, set clear goals. Doesn't take that much time. Once someone sets those goals, it's amazing how often people get there like twice as fast. I wanted financial freedom for my wife in 2 years. We got there in 11 months, not because I'm amazing. It's just because I was motivated and knew where I was going. So when things started working, it happened faster than I budgeted for.
Why do you think most people don't go through that exercise? Is just the lack of knowledge knowing that, or is it motivation? What is the reason?
I think people I think we've been given steps. A lot of it has to do with the way that we're educated, but we're often given the steps that we need to succeed. Do X and Y so that you can do this. Go to first so that you can make it to second. Graduate second so you can go to third. Go to college so you can get a higher paying job. Get a first job so you can get experience to get your second job. I think we're just used to, okay, someone is going to give me the steps, and if I follow the steps, I will continue to move forward. It's always been that way for me since I was a kid. Therefore, we'll get there. Again, I started with the Dave Ramsey's books. What I found is while I actually do like a lot of the principles Dave Ramsey's has, I hate the concept of baby steps. I like taking larger steps because my goals are larger than baby steps. I found that as an adult, I can also do things like walk and run, and there's more things you can do than take baby steps towards your goals. Like, take intentional, massive action towards the things you wanna do. They happen relatively quickly.
You mentioned you had a $250,000 a year sales job. Sounds
Mhm.
like that was growing really well. What type of mindset shift did you have to go through in order to decide, I'm going to put this behind me and pursue real estate?
Well, this was a conversation with my wife and I, so if you're for people who are married, you do actually have to get your spouse on board. But I there's one thing that I knew I could do. There's actually 2 things that I knew I could do because I achieved 2 things. I can make a $250,000 in sales. How do I know I can do this? Because I've already done it. There's other sales jobs. Sales is a very particular skill. I know that the skills that I have can earn a 250,000 plus. So if I leave the sales job, you can get another sales job and you can sell a bunch of stuff again. I've already know I can do it because I've proven I can do it. The biggest expense of my life at the time was my single family house. I've already bought in a house. And before that, I bought a condo that I lived in. So, worst case scenario, all the entrepreneurial measures didn't work. I lost the house. Like, the worst thing that could happen. What do I know I can do? I can get a high paying job and I can buy a house. So we can get back to where we're at, and it doesn't take that long. So for me, I'm like, okay, do I aspire to have a small single family house and have a job where I work a lot of hours for decent pay? Or do I want something more? And for my wife and I wanted something more. So I was like, okay, let's not do the thing that we're doing then because it's not getting me to more, it's getting me to where I'm at. I've found the one thing that you can really count on that has more value than just making money is having more and more valuable skills. I left the CoStar Group after I learned what I wanted to learn from them. I learned how to sell, a lot about how to sell. I was selling data, I was selling advertising. CoStar Group owns homes.com, apartments.com, LoopNet, basically all the commercial data for the internet. Largest research company in the US outside of the US Census Bureau. I mean, they're a big company. I learned what I had to learn there. There were no new skills that I was actively developing 4 years in. I knew how to move the product. I knew how to use the product. I understood the foundational pieces of selling to a bank, a property management company, an owner of real estate. There was no reason to stay there other than money, and money is a stupid reason to do things. So I left and I got the skills of actually starting a call center, working at a brokerage, and eventually I just went out and just bought my own real estate and realized buying real estate is a better sales job than selling data.
So, just to remind everybody again to head over to multifamilystrategy.com, multifamilystrategy.com to learn more about what Christian and his team is doing there. If you find some value in what we're talking about here so far, do us a quick favor, share this with one of your investor friends. And if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a quick like and subscribe. So, one of those things that I'm finding really interesting here is that when you've probably experienced most people that get into real estate investing, the low hanging fruit seems to be wholesaling because it's this promise of getting into real estate, no money down, that type of thing. However, you are taking this approach, and especially, I forget how many you said, 200 units maybe with.
I'll be just a little bit over 300 rental units. I close in 2 on a 44 unit. They'll put me a little over 3.
Sure. But I think you mentioned 200 units under creative financing
Mhm.
before you had to get a bank and stuff involved. Like, that is a shocking number. Like, just throw that out there. Like, so talk about finding your way in this creative financing and give people an idea of what we're talking about there.
So, creative finance is exactly what it sounds like. It's non-conventional finance, which means you're financing, but not through a bank. That doesn't mean necessarily seller finance or a land contract or subject to or any of the catchy things people associate. It's all of the above. It's any amount of creativity you can use in the actual debt product or the equity to close a deal. I found that the order of operations to do this is deal, then debt, then equity. Everyone who does not have the money yet to buy the amount of real estate you want, which was me, which was Cody, which was basically everyone, is you start with the opportunity and then you find what debt products are available. Is it seller financing? Is it only bank debt? Does this cash flow enough where it works with hard money for a few years? What is available to purchase the project? So you go deal, then debt. And with that, you can look at your opportunity. And if you need more money, you can bring in an equity partner. I've never done a syndication. I've never brought in large amounts of people. I have found any deal that I've ever wanted to do, it takes one or two people. And if you have the opportunity and you have the debt product, you have all the power. You have all the negotiating power. You have an income stream that you are purchasing, and that has inherent value. It is super easy to find the money once you figured out the deal and the debt. If you don't have money, you always worry about, well, where's the money going to come from? It's like, the money for what? You don't have an opportunity yet. That was the number one mindset shift that changed for me. So on this 38 plex, I've never raised capital before. Cody had raised capital one time for $120,000 to close his first 12 plex. For me, we're coming in. The deal was tight on cash flow, 38 units. It was value add. It was a little bit light on cash flow day one. One of my rules that always has to cash flow. Day one, out of the gates, I am buying an income stream. So we have to have long-term, fixed rate, cash flowing debt. That is how you know that once you buy the property, your income has increased permanently. You can both buy and hold it. That's a key piece of buy and hold that some people forget. You have to be able to do both sides, acquire and not lose. So we buy this building. When we're doing the capital raise, we're under contract. We got 85% seller financed. This was on the market for 13 years, by the way. So this is on market deal. It's been on the market forever. $2 million purchase price, 38 units, Central Washington. 85% seller financed at 4.5% interest. So low interest rate. However, the cash flow, because the building was performing so badly when we bought it, was super tight. So I couldn't raise additional debt for the last $300,000 to close. I didn't have friends or family, but I had a deal and I had the debt figured out. I had an actual package. And I'm like, this should be, in a few years, we're buying for two. This should easily be worth $3 million stabilized. By the way, our appraisal came in. We called the 4 phone numbers. And of the 4, 3 people came in with $100,000. We raised the money in 2 days. We closed the deal. We had a buyout clause. We could buy them out for double what they invested. So they total 300 in. I could buy them out for 600. Our first cash out refi, we pulled $1 million out. We paid out all the investors. We reinvested the other 300,000 back into the building. We later did a cash out refi and pulled out some money and paid ourselves. We never sacrificed cash flow. We still own that building today, 50-50, absolutely no partners. The building bought itself. It paid us. We found a deal where the real estate bought the real estate. We found the debt product that made it work in cash flow. We had a plan of how we're going to get it from A to B. And with that, the money was easy. But that's the big mindset change. If you don't have money, you get stuck on the money. That is the last piece of the equation. The down payment or the money you need in the deal comes after the opportunity is created. And if you can figure that out early, like we did, 2 weeks after that deal, we bought a 7-plex in Seattle. A week and a half after that, I bought a 6-plex right down the street from the 38-plex. 2 months later, I bought a 12-plex. From the same builder of that 12-plex, like 6 months later, we bought a 10, and then we bought another duplex. And we just kept expanding. We bought a resort in Union, Washington. I bought an RV park right down the street from the resort. And all of these were either seller financed or creatively financed. They all make money. Like they all cash flow. And these deals are absolutely out there. But that's how we did it and how we learned it was deal debt equity.
So there's a lot there. So you mentioned that the money is easy to find when you find that deal.
Mm-hmm.
Could you talk a little bit about, I don't want to give people the impression, because what I have found that what people have been told is that that is the case, but then they haven't built up their Rolodex to know that broker to call, or they haven't built some of those relationships in advance so that they can make a few phone calls in order to find that capital. What type of preparation did you do, and what type of relationships did you establish before the deal? Maybe you were doing that in parallel and you just never really took account for it.
Everyone knows someone who knows someone. In my case, it's a broker I'd talked to one time in my life. It wasn't a relationship that I had before the deal. They worked for a company that I was associated with in a different office in a different location. I just called someone and asked a question, "Hey, do you have anyone?" If it wasn't him, I would have called someone else. It wasn't someone who was already in my phone. I had to look up his phone number, but I had the opportunity first. That sixplex that I bought down the street, it was a great deal. It was 10% down, seller financed, 5% interest, long-term debt. I needed $90,000 to close a $900,000 transaction. I've already done 90% of the deal. It's seller financed. I already have 90% of the money. I found it. I found the opportunity. Conservatively, at the time, worth $1 million. Today, it's worth about $1.3 million for those. They're 3 side-by-side duplexes. I needed $90,000. I overheard someone in a Starbucks coffee shop right after I went under contract. And we got to talking, and he's like, "Hey, I've been working at Microsoft for a long time. I believe in real estate, but I keep making money, losing money, making money, losing money. This is where I've been stuck." I talked a little bit about what I was doing. Called him later the next day, and I was like, "Hey, I had an idea. I was thinking about this. I need cash flow right now for my goal. I'm trying to retire my wife. If you mentioned your goal is to make money. What does that look like?" And he's like, "Well, I don't need the income." He's like, "I need to double my money roughly every 5 years. You supply the 90,000. I have a buyout clause to buy you out for double your money within the next 5 years, which would exactly hit your goal. If I went all the way through, I bought him out early, by the way, so it was a better return for him. But I have 5 years to double your money, or I have to surrender my equity to you and you get all these properties at a great price with great terms." He's like, "Well, that sounds good. The collateral's good. Collateral's more than sufficient because it's effectively 100% collateral. It's not debt, which means I don't have to service it. Now it's a little bit closer to $3,000 a month. But day one, I bought $1,000 a month of cash flow. It cost me nothing out of pocket, hit his objectives, and he did end up doubling his money. I didn't build up a Rolodex. I went to Starbucks. If you really want to cheat, I mean, you can go to real estate meetups. You can meet more people. I found that just meeting with other owners who own real estate, could be a duplex, could be 1,000 units. It doesn't matter. Get around people doing the thing you want to do. Again, I had a deal that was 90% funded that cash flowed day one on long-term fixed rate debt. That's super valuable. You have enough time to find someone who wants to invest in that. Get in any community anywhere. You can do it in Multifamily Strategy on our Facebook page. We funded, I think, just people on the page have funded a little over $20 million this year of other people's deals just because someone's like, "Hey, I'm working on an opportunity. I'm going to underwrite it on a live call. Who wants to just look at the deal with me?" They're not soliciting. They're not asking for a partner. They're just saying, "Hey, I'm running my deal. I'd love feedback." And just from running those drills publicly on the free page, over $20 million of real estate was done. That's because you have an opportunity first. It is so easy to get stuck on it, but I would not focus on raising personally. I would focus less on the Rolodex and more on finding a deal. Because if you have a deal, it's easy to build a Rolodex. If you're trying to build a Rolodex and you don't have anything to offer them,
Well, I'm probably going to ignite a rant here.
let's do it.
But when I brought up wholesaling, I got a huge eye roll. So what's the story there?
So there's always a flavor of the month in real estate. And Bigger Pockets was really, really early to push the wholesaling thing as a way to get liquidity in real estate. I often get an assignment fee to assign. I wholesale to myself or to my LLC often, especially if it's a project I've worked on for a long time or a relationship that I have for a long time. If I've done months and months and months of work on the front end and I figured out the financing, and part of the value I brought was a ton of front end work. It's like, yes, I will receive an assignment fee for moving it into the LLC. That is a normal thing to do. So you can absolutely get liquid on buying your deal. You can get an assignment fee you can get the same fee and you can own it. So that's the first thing with wholesaling. But more importantly, what is the actual end goal? The richest people have equity. There's 3 types of money. There's cash flow, there's liquidity, and there's equity. Those are the 3 main categories. All of them can be traded for each other. You're only actually rich if you hold all 3 in like reasonable balance at the same time. So I knew I needed $15,000 a month. I need enough money to not lose it all. So I need some reserves and I need equity because equity grows over time. Real estate doubles roughly every decade or so. So you want to hold some equity in real estate. I also don't want a sales job. I've had a lot of sales jobs. Wholesaling is a sales job. You work, you get paid. You stop working, you have nothing. Wholesaling is not owning real estate. I I skipped a lot of the steps that other people have taken, going from single family to small multifamily to I just jumped into multifamily because that's what I wanted to do. You can't skip necessary steps, but I think people have a huge habit of adding way too many steps. I need to be a broker before I can be a real estate. Well, do you want to be a broker? Well, no, but it will help me. Probably not. Honestly, it probably won't. Wholesaling, you get addicted to the assignment fees. Every wholesaler I know, every single one, I talk to them and they're like, "Oh, I really want to own real estate one day." I'm like, then do it. But what happens is they get a deal wrapped up and they go, "Well, there's a little bit of mold in one closet. And so now I'm a little bit nervous about the deal. And I think I'm just going to wholesale and take the fee." They get addicted to the stupid fees and they get scared of buying the real estate. Every wholesaler I know, even the ones who make a lot of money, they're always chasing the next deal. They never have a large portfolio. They're always going to be running their business manually or be actively involved in their business. If you want to be a real estate owner and operator, which is what every wholesaler I've ever met wants to do, just go do that. You don't need to wholesale to get there. It's not a necessary step, but it's been marketed as that. That's why I'm not big on wholesaling. There's a place for it. It's a real business and there's real good money to make in it. But I found that it distracts people from the main thing. They never build equity. And so they never get truly wealthy. They just get liquidity. You don't get cash flow. You don't get equity. I want all three. And so for me, it's really important that people are aware, hey, if you want to own real estate, I recommend you own real estate. You want to be a real estate investor? The only qualification is that you buy a property. Congratulations, you're an entrepreneur. You've made it. You have to buy a rental to be an investor. That's the only rule.
Well, I hear creative financing as a
Mhm.
term when it comes to single family homes and wholesaling all the time. I don't want to maybe call it a secret when it comes to multifamily investing is that creative financing and approaching a seller in multifamily is actually more common and people in many ways are more receptive to it. Would you agree with that?
Multifamily is designed to be run as a business. That's what it is. 5 units and up, it's commercial. Commercial valuations, commercial. It is a business that you're buying and selling, which inherently makes it easier than single family. Example, my duplexes. I actually did this on first ever duplex I purchased. I renovated the daylights out of it. Well, I ended up selling it and rolling it into a acquisition of a 12-plex, which later refinanced and bought a 24 unit. I was able to roll the money along. But this first duplex, I renovated the daylights out of it. I nailed market rent. Like we first project went so well, which is lucky. I mean, it was it was intentional, but I did not make a lot of mistakes renovating like heavy reno on a first duplex. We went through that project. I ended up selling it to buy this 12-plex. Appraisal came in lower than it should have by about $25,000, which on a duplex is notable. Came in $25,000 low. The day after I sold, my neighbor, identical build, did not renovate his duplex because he had mine as a sales comp. His was automatically worth more. He took out a huge cash out refi and was able to keep his duplex. And he appraised for, I think it was $15,000 more than mine did. Residential works off of what your neighbor does with their property, not what you do. And so when I knocked it out of the park, my neighbor who didn't do the project actually got a better deal than I did. In commercial, your operations, the income that you add to your property adds to the valuation. That's super powerful. So not only is it easier to buy multifamily, it's easier to control the value add, it's easier to raise for, and everyone else, to your point, everyone else is a business owner. More people treat it like a business. Seller financing is a normal thing to do. And I'll tell you what, I built my entire portfolio off of meeting other people, not asking for sales, not building a sales job, not building a funnel or a pipeline. I've never asked anyone to sell a property. ever in my life. I've never asked, hey, would you consider an offer? Are you open to selling? I've met people and I've communicated what I'm trying to do. And I've networked with other owners about owning real estate, not about buying their property. What happens is everyone in my market knows what I'm trying to do, just like I know what they're trying to do. When a deal comes up or they want to sell something or their buddy wants to sell something, they give me a call and say, hey, are you open to transaction? We already know, like, and trust each other. It is so much easier to finance the someone who you know, like, and trust. So just get networked with people, other business owners. The other thing I found is if they own a lot of rentals, they often don't need a ton of cash right now because they probably are already pretty wealthy. If you're doing single family, a lot of people, I'd say 99% of the time, they need the cash from the sale for something. They're trying to buy the next house. They're trying to buy a next rental. They need the liquidity. In multifamily, like I have 300 units. I today I don't need a huge capital. That just means more tax for me. I would love to seller finance. In fact, I sold my property management company earlier in the year. I sold it seller finance to someone who I know, liked, and trusted to run the portfolio and to manage the clients who I'd built over 3 years. Why would I do that? Because I don't want a ton of cash right now. I would love to have payments for not doing my PM job for 3 years. It's fantastic. I actually get paid about the same as I was paying myself for 3 years not doing the work. Someone bought my job from me. That's phenomenal. I think it's a lot easier to do in multifamily for those reasons, though, because people have already scaled up. They tend to own a lot, and it's a business. Businesses go seller financed all the time.
Well, after 300 plus units, I need you to tell me what has been the most painful lesson that you
Oh,
experienced so far.
so massively expensive too. So this would be a good one. Bought the Robin Hood Village Resort, a beautiful, I mean, I'm gorgeous resort, historic, built in 1934. It's on Washington State's Hood Canal. So you come out of the Olympic Mountains, right on the foothills of all the hiking trails. So you're in the huge tall pine trees. I got a river running through the resort. It's 12 and a half acres. Salmon run up the stream. I have these annoying beavers that I'm always chasing away, but you have this beautiful, beautiful wildlife. Some of the cabins can actually see the orcas will come in about every 3 years. It's saltwater canal. From some of the cabins, you can actually watch orcas. It was the most expensive mistake I've ever made. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, I took all of my multifamily people and we all came, like, we came together and we tried to operate a resort. And turns out hospitality with all 9 employees who run that thing is not multifamily. It's way more involved. It's taken a ton of time, and 20 units is not large enough to hire a full-time competent manager. So you're always actively involved in that business. I've been chained to that business for a while. The cost to leave that business before all the value is in the terms. I built amazing value in these terms. Well, interest rates immediately went up. So if I was trying to sell the resort, I bought it for what it was worth. Maybe slightly more, but we got amazing terms. So it works if you hold it through its long-term debt. It's an 8-year debt product. Problem is, I want to get rid of it, but I can't because someone would have to buy it and cash it out. It doesn't work at 7.5% bank debt. It worked at 4.5. I can't get out of the position without losing about $1 million because it distracts me from all of the things I'm doing. And what I'm finding is I'm like, it may actually be easier to earn $1 million elsewhere than to keep trying to run a resort that I don't want to run in a state that I no longer live in. That is if you're going to make a mistake, this is my first year of investing. Don't spend $4.5 million on a resort and learn a new business. That was the dumbest thing I could have done. Vertical integration. I bought a whole bunch of rentals and then I started a property management company because I was better at leasing and better at managing renovations than the other managers in town. That makes perfect sense. Great business venture. Made a lot of money doing it. Sold the company for quite a bit. Started another one in Texas because it makes a lot of sense to have. I have my whole mentorship platform, Multifamily Strategy. I kept trying to get help on sales and marketing, and people kept just being awful. Started my own sales and marketing company, which also helps me build the PM company and lease my units. Vertical integration. Then I have this silo over here with a $4.5 million resort. And I'm like, do I keep going through all the frustration or do I just say, hey, instead of making money on this, because it is cash flow positive, do I just take a loss and move on? It's a hard thing to stomach. It was really hard to earn the first $1 million. Going like, do I give up $1 million and just focus on the other ventures that I like and care about more? That's a really expensive mistake. I mean, that's really expensive. The fact that that's even a thought of like, keep doing it, pay $1 million. Keep doing it, pay $1 million. I built my dream house in Texas for $850,000. It's more than the cost of my house. That would be a loss to get out of that particular mistake. That is a bummer.
Well, now that we've properly scared everybody, let's move to a little motivation. Like,
Yeah.
people are thinking about getting into real estate investing for the very first time. They are struggling with the concept of, do I start with single family homes? Do I go into wholesaling? What are you going to tell them? What would you guide them to
I would
motivate
say,
them? And
I think we laid the framework for this actually really well on this podcast. Where do you want to go? If you want to buy a few rentals, one rental at a time, and you want to be a little wealthier when you're older, maybe, 20 years from now, sell a house, put one of your kids through college, something like that. Have fun in single family. Uh, Or instead of buying 10 single families and do one transaction at a time, buy one 10-plex. It's going to be worth more. You're going to have more control and it's a lot less work. If you're just super passionate about single family, you love houses, you like the design thing, do the thing that you want to do. But if your goal is to scale somewhere, your goal is cash flow, or your goal is financial freedom, all of those things are easier in the commercial space, 5 units and up. And I can tell you from experience, a 10 unit isn't much harder to run than a duplex. And a 25 unit building isn't much harder to run than a 12-plex. It's not that much more work to scale a little bigger, but you can do that in a lot less transactions. I, on average, purchase 2 to 4 deals per year. So like every quarter or half year, I buy a deal and it's 25 to 50 units. I've amassed hundreds of rentals in 3.5 years, and I've hit financial freedom like 4 times over because I'm just really picky about my deals. I only buy for cash flow and I don't transact that often. It's not even close to a full-time job. I spend maybe, like generously, I spend 15 minutes a day, maybe, looking for deals. If your goal is financial freedom, getting out of the 9 to 5, you'll scale way faster multifamily. If your goal is, hey, I just want something simple, lower down, that I can play, just play one rental at a time, sure. Look at houses through fourplexes, but build the business that you want to build.
well, Christian, this has been a fantastic conversation. I really appreciate the value you brought. Again, I'm going to send everybody over to multifamilystrategy.com. That's multifamilystrategy.com. That's going to be a clickable link in the show notes.
You know what? I think you hit the big ones. Scaling was really important to me. Like, especially, as you go through, it's like if you have an issue, let's say the Robinhood, for example, it's $1 million issue. It's like, well, let's go solve some $10 million problems. And now your $1 million issue seems smaller. Figure out what you want to do, scale to the size that you want to scale. When in doubt, if you can't win on price, win on terms. Creative finance allowed me to do a lot of what I did. I didn't have any qualifications. Like, they never ran my credit score. It was actually a great credit score, but they never ran it because you don't need to. They didn't require money down. They didn't need bank statements. They just needed to know, like, hey, you have a business plan that works. So I think you hit the big ones. Creative finance, scale into multifamily. These are good things to talk about.
Well, if you're ready, we'll jump in and then we'll close out this episode.
All right.
What lie do real estate investors sometimes tell themselves?
Oh, lie that real estate investors tell themselves. I need to be a broker to move forward. I need to start a huge call center. I need a massive marketing lead list. No, you don't. You need to know where you're headed, and then you need to create the simplest path from A to B.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self a piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't buy the resort.
Do you have a book recommendation?
Right now, well, in addition to the Bible, which I'm always reading, Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. I'm reading for like the 5th time. It's one of a few books I read every single year. Excellent, excellent book on negotiating. Probably the best one written. That is an excellent book.
Yeah.
Oh, so good.
What single strategy, process, or tool have you implemented that has had the biggest time-saving impact to you or your business?
I stopped going after sellers. In fact, I eliminated the word seller from my vocabulary. Everyone is an owner. By eliminating sellers, I treat everyone as an owner. I don't care if you have a duplex or you have 1,000 units. There is something that you have, and there's a building you own that I don't. I have something to learn from everyone. I treat every single person as an owner, and that has had the biggest impact on my business and my ability to navigate than any other concept that I've come across.
That's really interesting, and maybe we should have a whole episode on that. Again, Christian, this was fantastic. I really appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us. Again, multifamilystrategy.com. That's going to be clickable in the show notes, but I hope you'll consider coming back again sometime. It was great meeting you.
Dude, invite me back anytime. I love this. Thanks for having me on.